Welcome back to Downstairs and Dragons, where we play D&D in our basement. It's been a while since we've had an episode because it's a little hard to come down to an empty studio. Most of our players are playing off camera now, and there'll be more about updates with the channel at the end of the episode. What we're really here about is our last Hisugi's Heroes recap. I've had this script written for a couple months, so we should actually probably get through it. So, we're going to get started talking about what our players went through and the magical items they picked up along the way. Start by recapping who our characters are. We have our Cicalia, a half-man, half-octopus named Takoyaki, who bounces around, controlled by Dieter. This bard has tons of energy and personality, and he even named himself the word that means octopus balls. So everyone he meets is right away aware of his sense of humor. Now this Prince Jonex here of our water sprites is led by our player Josh. This warlock has had many opportunities to meet the royal and noble persons of Hali, like himself, but he's disliked most of them. Our elderly wizard here, Orwell, started the story by sleeping and being carried around. Jacob took control of Orwell and really ruffled everyone's fins with his wonderfully controversial conversation topics. And then we have our out-of-the-ordinary Lokatha, Yisk, who is played by Ben. Calculating and stubborn, he seemed to have his own agenda, but made sure the job got done, even if it was bloody. He was a blood hunter, after all. So, we finally left with our Triton, Karos, who is a monk, remained mostly calm in disputes, and only brought out his anger with dignity. Karos was everyone's buddy, quick to take joy in the bright side of things. And Dusty, our player, made sure to play Karos with many different hats. So our 5 fishy people had to flee the ocean to escape a pissed-off kraken, and they brought with them a family of rich slaves, who will pay their way back to the Sea of Hali. But they can't get back to Hali without first finding the bronze dragon and Hisugi's horde, and finding a way to get past the kraken, because that's not going to be a fight they can handle anytime soon. So what's going to happen while they're on land? This is a whole new section of the story that was about to start, a whole new quest to track down the bronze dragon we encountered way back in episode 7, who stole Hisugi's horde. Alright, so you don't have to memorize every teeny tiny part of this. The town that they get into had a lot of backstory, and I'm happy to repeat myself as we go along. A lot of this stuff will come back up in the epilogue, and I will repeat myself then too. So make sure if you're interested in the epilogue, interested in what would have happened in Hisugi's Heroes, you let us know in the comments, because that'll push me to make the videos a little more soon, and we'll get some things going. Alright, so they land on a very skinny beach. And this beach, there's a little bit of sand, there's a little bit of road, and then it's just cliffs and spires, and it's a perfect place for a town to be nestled up in between the spires, because if anyone were to attack this village along this road, they'd have to go through many guarded gates, and it would narrow their forces. And you can't really come along in any other direction because of all the spires. And yes, there's a forest way in the back, but we'll hear later why people can't attack through the forest either. And we already know why they can't attack through the sea. There's a kraken there. So this town of Sanctuary that they end up in is very, very well protected by just, I guess, circumstance of where they are. So, in the middle of the day, there are humans traveling the road, mostly merchants, just traveling, going through the checkpoints, and it's very clear that our strange characters are not going to blend in with a bunch of humans. A couple of our players intend on not blending in. They intend on going to a bar and starting a fight, and that was our players Ben and Jacob, controlling Orwell and Yisk. So they march off to Sanctuary on their own. However, the remaining 3 end up getting into trouble in a Sanctuary on accident. They're just trying to find who's in charge of Sanctuary to get some information. We want to find the bronze dragon. We want to find where to leave our sea elf friends for a while. But ultimately, all of our party end up in the same place, because the only bar in town, named the Spring, is in the back of town and is where all of the leaders of town hang out. It's where you can find them. So, before we can even get to learning who leads this town, how this town is built, how it's run, Orwell and Yisk get into a bar fight, and Sometimes I go back and forth on how we should have handled this bar fight differently. It's a bit messy. You can definitely tell that we're all in classes and we're all working and we're really tired when it came to D&D. But the point of why the drunken master monk that Yisk fought, the reason why he was so strong is to tell you a few things. First of all, every civilian in Sanctuary is trained. They have mandatory service that they have to do at one point or another. So every civilian, every resident knows how to use whatever weaponry around them to protect themselves. And they all have the posture of a soldier, and basically our party members aren't surrounded by a bunch of fools. And also, because this person that Yisk is fighting, Adard, he is one of the heads of the head families of town. So it was kind of obligatory to have such a difficult opponent, but I was also willing to have more than one person fight him. It just so happened that Yisk fought him. Orwell tried to help by cheating, but then the head guard caught him, and it was a big mess. So, right now, so far, it seems like our party members owe the city something because they picked a fight with a drunk man. But then our party feels like the city owes them for messing up that bar fight. It gets a little more complicated than that when we find out that Jonex, our water sprite, is a huge threat to the city's safety. They have always thought that they've had a hollow spell on the city for hundreds of years, so Jonex shouldn't have been able to enter at all. But he did, so if the word gets out that Fae can enter the city, there's going to be a lot of other issues. So the heads of Sanctuary are trying to keep Jonex calm, keep Jonex within the city limits, to make sure no one finds out before they get the hollow spell replaced. But no one has time to figure anything out because Jonex is walking into town, sparked a bunch of magical effects that put the town in chaos. We don't necessarily know why, we just know all of a sudden Jonex showed up and there's been tons of Fae magic everywhere. So now the town feels like the party owes the town for causing trouble. So the party goes, okay, well, we'll tell you about the Bronze Dragon and you'll tell us what you know about the Kraken if you just go do some of the stuff in town that needs to be dealt with. Our militia are going to take care of this people, making sure they're healthy and safe and taking care of whatever. So that's how they get roped into this, before they've had a chance to rest after dealing with the Kraken and the bar fight. Now, this is where we go into like Act 2 of Chapter Sanctuary. Act 2 is supposed to be the tricks of Sanctuary, but we got about halfway through it. We started with our party needing to address 3 issues specifically. Let me find that list. Okay. So 3 issues. The first issue is that there's a tree in the center of town. Now the center of town is a special district. It's where the hospital, the schools, and I guess the colleges are. It's a part of town that is blessed by, let's see, who's the god who does that? Lathander. Lathander is the god who blesses the center of their town. And so there's a lot of children and elderly and sick there. So having a tree trying to kill people who walk by is not a great thing. So what's going on is the tree believes that its dryad has gone missing and is freaking out trying to find the dryad. Now, as it turns out, spoiler alert, there is no dryad. The tree was just awakened and manipulated. Jonex ended up finding the enchantment that awakened it. On the tree was a little wooden totem that was moving. And it was moving to show that its magic had been released. And it was very tiny, like teeny tiny. Small enough for a sprite to hold. This kind of gives the players a hint that there's going to be more of these little totems around and they're going to trigger magical effects. And that's the source. So this is going to kind of lead down an investigation to what is causing all of these issues. So our team manages to settle down the tree, move on to the next task. Number 2, they needed to deal with very poisonous, toxic smoke billowing out of multiple homes in a specific neighborhood. And it's beautiful. There's all these different colors of the rainbow of smoke coming out of these homes, but it's incredibly dangerous. And only our monk Karos can brave the smoke to go into the houses and find the fireplace and find the smoking logs. However, the log isn't like burning, it's just smoking. So he brings the smoking log out to a fountain where the others are, and they're like, well, we can't get the fire put out, let's just throw the log into the fountain. The log goes in and shakes and convulses violently. And then eventually it stops, and the smoke stops as well. So they move on to the next house, and they grab the next log, and they do this over and over again until all of the homes no longer have smoking logs. They throw the last log in, they're watching it convulse, and they're just like, you know, it's kind of strange the way it convulsed and the way that it was never on fire, it was just smoking. Wait, is that a crack? Is the smoke coming out of a crack? Is there something in the log? And then they pull the log out, they crack it open, and they actually manage to find a almost dead, barely alive fae called a Barinya. And wait, Barinyas? It's like a purplish little fae the size of Jonex that gives off smoke, and they can be evil if you don't please them with proper treats. So all of them are dead except for one, because they left the drowning logs in the fountain too long. But that's not it yet. There's more going on in the center of this fountain plaza. Everyone decides to split up and try to find more of the little totems, more of the little magical enchantment objects. Orwell, even though his eyes are covered by coral growing over his face, he does have a robe of eyes and can see very well. And he saw so well that he found so many of these little totems. Most of them weren't even moving yet. And because he rolled a nat 1, he picked all of them up and set all of them off. So I had to grab my list of magical effects that were going to happen, and we had to start a bunch of them all at once. The biggest thing that happened was that a summoning portal opened and summoned a very pissed off Dullahan. This is not what the Dullahan wants to be doing with its day, and just starts fighting them. So this was supposed to be me helping the party earn experience because they desperately want to level up, but they haven't had enough experience yet, so we're trying to give them more fights to get them leveled up. I should have just leveled them up anyway. But the Dullahan fight was a little close. They'd already done some other things today. They were low on energy, and the Dullahan managed to use its special trick where it points and like auto kills you. It was really close. I was really glad to get my players on edge, but they did survive. And while Yisk was resting from his close encounter, the others were like, well, let's fuck around with all these enchantments we got. So the first thing we notice is that Orwell has a doppelganger. There's an illusory version of Orwell trying to take his place. And while they're running around the fountain, our party decides, well, let's find the real one by attacking it. And, well, they're lucked out, and they didn't kill their friend Orwell trying to kill his doppelganger. Maybe they wanted, I don't know. So then Orwell also, he grows a beard that he just eats through his skin. So normal, weird coral people things. And there's some other things that happen. Hold on. Well, yeah, there's a terrible smell. Terrible. The good news is, if you are covered in this terrible smell, you can get rid of it. You just have to touch another person, and then that person will smell bad, and you'll be fine. So I was hoping that would go into a playful game of D&D tag. We didn't get that far, because before they got that far, they found another enchantment. One of the cobblestone bricks, one of those stones, was affected by an enchantment. And what happens is it will repel anyone who touches it at a proportionately larger velocity than what struck it. So if you struck it at like 1, like if you, I don't know math, you strike it, it'll bounce you 10 times higher, basically. And so when they stepped on it, it threw them in the air and they fell, and they're like, oh, that's cool. So they found which rock it was. And they had the brilliant idea of throwing Jonex at this little rock. So Karos takes this little pixie in his hand, like takes his whole body, and just winds up and whips his body into the ground, gets a nat 1, and I still laugh thinking about Jonex's body hitting some other random rock and just koosh, and he just hit so hard, but then like you think that would deter him from doing it again, but no, they wanted to try again. So this time Yisk grabs his whole body and whips him into the rock, which sends Jonex way up into the air with his immovable moonstone. And that's actually where we ended the episode. The episode ended right there with Jonex 100 feet in the air, and that's where Jonex still is, 100 feet in the air, waiting to come down. There were a couple other things they didn't get to that they knew about. They were told there was an issue with the livestock, and I can talk about in the epilogue what that issue would have been. I also have a ton of other magical effects that would have gone off, but I'll talk about those in the epilogue too, because they technically haven't happened yet. The other issue is that the entire time they were doing this, I wasn't going to have them scream into the microphone, but there were bees buzzing incredibly loud. Basically, every bee from the northern part of town, where the apiaries are, every bee sounded as loud as like a chainsaw or a lawnmower or a leaf blower, like just loud, buzzing everywhere. So those two issues were ones they were going to go into next, and it was going to spark a very, very long trail of things. This whole Sanctuary, Tricks of Sanctuary chapter was meant to earn them enough experience points to level up. I wanted them to level up at the end of this. And so we'll go into that later. With something that is still part of the recap that we should go into are all of the magical items. Now, I don't remember every single one. I don't have all of their cards because some of the players took them. So we're going to try to do this from my memory as best as possible. I'll put the stat blocks down below in the description if you ask for them. But let's get started with a giant item list. I ultimately want to end up on those special parchments that Orwell had that we didn't have enough time to go into. Those were one of my favorite magical items I've ever created, so we'll end with those. So first thing, we had the beads of blurring, and we had stuff on, do you remember Augie there? Yeah, so I've got his items. Those are actually from 3.5. You can find those items in the 3.5 books. But he had beads of blurring, and he had beast skin. He had beast skin wraps. It was a +1 to AC. Okay, so one of the items they found in the shipwrecks, they found a bird summons whistle. It calls out to birds in the sea, and you can use it to determine the direction towards land, how far away land is. And it has a chance of summoning a creature of the sky. That's all I wrote. We were going to have a bunch of sky creatures that you could accidentally summon, like a griffin or a rock, or, we'd have a bunch of other ones. So then they found an alchemy jug. You all know what that is. Cutlass of Breezes. The Cutlass of Breezes does 1d6 plus 4 slashing damage and 1d6 plus 4 force damage. It's supposed to be like being hit with a really strong wind. But this was just supposed to be a +1 weapon to kind of bring my players up another level. The water wheel plant net. These were the plant nets that are living, and they will actually grapple on to what you throw them on. The Lantern of Starlight. They ended up using that when they were dealing with the Kraken. This would have been really useful on land later, so we can talk about that later. Okay, then we had the ceramic daggers and the ceramic trident. Those were unbreakable. They were +1 unbreakable, and because they were unbreakable, they could be wielded to do more damage. So instead of being a dagger that does like 1d4 +1, we made it 1d6 +1. So it was just like a custom dagger. Let's see. Okay, so do you remember at the very beginning when they helped Hisugi, some of the children gave Jonex a warming rock? It's supposed to be a little rock that helps baby dragonkin stay warm. Now it seems unimportant, but I was actually going to bring that in later. They used the warming rock later to read invisible ink on some old parchments without damaging it, so I really liked that item. It would have been cool. Then we also had the herbalism kit, which seemed unimportant at first, but it helped them get through the aboleth's mucus without being hurt, and it would have helped them again in the future. There were some more recipes that helped. Then we had the immovable moonstone, which I recently mentioned. So you've seen the immovable rod. The immovable moonstone also could just be stopped or moved. But we were going to give it more command words. We didn't get to that point yet, but we were hoping to give it like a moonbeam or like some kind of tide suppressant. Something that someone on a ship would use that would make journeying by sea easier. So like if there are very large swells, it could mellow them out. The moonstone was supposed to have a lot more to it. Also in the shipwrecks, Takoyaki found the captain's coat. It's the coat of smuggler's pockets. It's full of secret pockets that people cannot detect, even with a wand of secrets, or like it's just like it's a next level of you can't detect what's in these pockets. If someone used something really high level, I guess maybe I'd let them, but it was basically kind of an OP item. I feel bad about it, but I wanted my players to be able to get through checkpoints without having like illicit material, like the Umberly stuff, all over them. So that's the point of that coat, was so they could hide Umberly artifacts in their pockets and get through the checkpoint. In one of the pockets was an item that Dieter wanted for takoyaki. It's actually a fan-made SCP item. It was a gun that every time you shoot it, it goes, "Nice shot." And we thought takoyaki would have fun with that, and we could teach it other things to say that would just be stupid, and you just pull the trigger or like do other things with the weapon, and it would say things over and over and over and over, which sounds like takoyaki. So that was what was in the pocket. He just hadn't quite found it yet, if you remember that from the show. Let's see. Okay, let's go back to, do you remember the Sea Elf slave? No. The Sea Elf encampment with Acacius, who was the immortal human cleric, who worshipped Umberly. He had special items. He gave the party the blow darts of pelting rain that could actually be shot underwater, which is kind of a big deal because physical items can't go very far underwater due to friction and other physics and things. And then he also gave them the shield of Umberly's protection, which prevented waves and winds from blowing you over. You basically always have a strong footing as long as you're holding that shield up. The hand wraps of Umberly's wrath. That was an important item for Chaos because as a monk he did not want to wear armor and he did not want to don weapons, so it's hard to give him a +1 as a monk. So the hand wraps were the loophole. They not only were +1, but they did force damage and cold damage because it was supposed to be like the wrath of the deepest parts of the ocean just hitting people. I really like those hand wraps. Those are made out of the skin of a Kuo-toa. Acacius made those himself. We would have gone into it. Now Acacius himself, the Umberly cleric, he had a bow and a quiver that were enchanted. The bow could shoot underwater, and the quiver would enchant the arrows with like air enchantment so that the arrows could shoot underwater. They basically were a pair set, and they were +2 or 3. They were supposed to be endgame treasure, something like at the end game you would get something that strong. It was supposed to be a very, very high level item that is just super rare. So, okay, that's all the items I can think of. If there's one I didn't mention, feel free to let me know. We're gonna move into Orwell's jars. So, I created the tent jars of Destroy Water. I thought these were a good idea because if you're a pirate or just a trade merchant by sea, you would want to keep some things safe from water. So anything that goes into these jars, all water is evaporated. It's a Destroy Water jar. It keeps them safe. Even if the lid is taken off, the water will not go into this jar. One of the jars, I can't remember what was in it, and I can't find my stack of note cards. So unfortunately, we're going to scratch one of those off because I can't remember what it was, and I'll post in the description if I ever remember. The second one had wizard scrolls. Some of the wizard scrolls Orwell already knew, but I was going to throw in some new spells in there that he could have learned and written down in a spell book. No, the other 8 things, they didn't have to keep. They could have sold these. These were supposed to be what made the party a ton of money once they got to a big city. We just didn't get to that chance. I don't know which ones to start with. Start with the silly ones? Start with the silly ones. There was the Scroll of Replication. I said scroll, but it's a scroll. Scroll of Replication. By reading the enchantment on the scroll, it will deteriorate the one you're reading and create an exact duplicate, an exact replica of the Scroll of Replication. So basically, you destroy one to create an exact copy, and the only thing the exact copy does is make it just continues. You basically make another one over and over and over again. It does nothing. It's silly. I love that one. Okay, so then we have the Spell of Hats. The Spell of Hats was going to have like a list of 1,000 things that could be considered a hat, and it's vague. Basically, anything that can go in a head is a hat. And when you read this enchantment, a hat will appear on your head, and I think it'll be some of the hats are affixed there for a while, and some of them you can take off, and you just have extra hats. We had so many ideas. I don't have the list anymore, but it was things like a fish and like a flower, and like, so some of them are silly and some of them are cute, and one of them was like a rabbit shaped like a hat, and there's just a bunch of weird hats that we were gonna throw on the players. Now, the next one, Jacob playing Orwell did actually look into this one randomly. We pulled one out, and he found the Tapestry of Fate. Now, he didn't quite roll high enough or study it long enough to really understand what it was, but all these weaving threads appearing on the tapestry were actually his fate. It was his fate laid out. But to actually understand what the threads mean and what the crossroads mean and what any of it means would take a very long amount of study. So while the Tapestry of Fate wasn't necessarily for the party, they could have sold it for a lot of money to someone who lives a very long time. Now, so that's Tapestry of Fate. The other one that was worth a lot of money to someone else is the Undecipherable Algorithm. It's an entire parchment full of math and algebra and stuff that the party just will not understand. I don't even know if I'd let them understand with a nat 20. I think I'd let them understand how valuable it was with a nat 20, but this is just incomprehensible math that answers like secrets to the universe. And so it was something they could sell for a lot of money. Where's the other one that you can sell for a lot of money? Okay, so there's one they could have chosen to keep or sell. This one I love. It looks like a bunch of paper in a jar, and no matter which way you're looking at the jar, it says, "Please be kind to me." And you can keep rolling it, and the ink will move and always say, "Please be kind to me." If they take this parchment out of the jar and they're kind to it for an extended amount of time, it will reveal itself to actually be a paper drake. It will rebuild itself, and it's a paper drake. And it's been stuck in that jar for who knows how long, and they could sell it to a library or college or something for a lot of money, or keep it, but as underwater creatures that might not work. So the paper drake was just a special thing that I threw in there. The Spell of Aroma. Now the Spell of Aroma is another one that to the right person could make a lot of money. It just makes things smell good. It brings them to their ultimate potential. So if you cast the Spell of Aroma on a wood table, it would smell like the best wood you've ever smelled, like incense. You apply it to food, it would make the food smell better. However, this spell was made by a winery. They did it to make their wine smell better. And so if you do it to wine, not only does it make it smell better, but it makes it taste better. And if you do it, it had it all written out. I had the enchantment written out. I had all the rules written out for the Spell of Aroma. But the Spell of Aroma would have been valuable to a winery in Sanctuary, so they could have made money on it right away. And that was the intention of that one, for them to make a lot of money. There's one more. Hold on. Okay. Oh, there's two more. The Chest of Secrets. This is a parchment that has creases everywhere. And if you sit there and mess with the creases long enough, you actually can build a big paper chest. And once the chest is put together, there's writing that appears around it that says, you know, "I am your ultimate secret keeper." It was written cooler than that. Like, "I'm your ultimate secret keeper. Give me your secret and I will keep it." And basically this is a spell that locks your secret so only you know it. And you cannot be tricked out of that secret. Even if someone is super nice to you and you voluntarily tell them the secret, you actually physically can't tell them if they're lying to you, if they're pretending to be nice to you. If it ultimately will reveal your secret, they won't hear it, or if they try to read it somewhere, they can't read it. It is the ultimate secret keeping spell. And that one is worth a ton of money. I think it had, on the jar, it had like a catalog, like very important, going to king or something. So that was an incredibly, very special one. But here's one of my favorites. So now this one, it doesn't make sense. When you try to read it, it doesn't make sense. But if you roll up the parchment into a cone and you read it like this way, it makes sense. And what it is you push air, you blow through it, and it is the Dragon Breath spell. So once a day, you can do a random dragon breath, and it was created by a dragon sorcerer. He enchanted the parchment to be a dragon breath cone. For someone who can't cast magic, it will just work for anybody. So that one's pretty valuable too, but I thought that was a neat addition to either our wizard could use it, our warlock could use it, basically anyone in the party could use it. It's a nice long range weapon to add to their arsenal. Now that's all of the magical items. So we finished our recap portion of this episode, and it's time to go into updates. So Downstairs and Dragons doesn't have much for recordings anymore because a lot of us have gotten jobs, graduated college, and our schedules don't line up so much. We've got a few people who play off camera because they just feel more comfortable off camera and do a really great job. So I wanted to run some content ideas by you and get your opinion. Well, the first thing is, are you interested in a Hisugi's Heroes epilogue? Would you like to hear how it ended? Our players that I told, they told me at least that they liked it and they felt that everything connected and wrapped up in the end. it's just a lot of content. So if you're interested in hearing me talk that much, just me, I'll take the camera out of this empty studio and we'll hang out and I'll tell you how Hisugi's Heroes ends. Now, that comes to another idea. Because we've been playing off camera, if you've been playing like Wizards of the Coast, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, and Tyranny of Dragons, if you're interested in how our party went through it, we could do a podcast style series where me and Dieter sit with the book and explain how our party went through the challenges of the Wizards of the Coast module. And while we do plan on having a full table full of real people again, it might be a little bit of time. We're trying to find some more improv actors willing to be on camera who could meet, 4 hours a week. So we will see where we go. We'd love to hear your stories about D&D, hear what you've been up to. We're always happy to talk about D&D for hours. So the moment someone brings it up with me, they're in trouble. So it's going to go on forever. And that's why I should end now before I go on forever. I hope you guys are having fun playing D&D, and I hope you had fun joining us downstairs. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.